My boyfriend was lazy, ugly, and a shameless freeloader to boot. Not only did he try to skip out on the 20,000 he borrowed from me, but after learning I was an orphan with no one to rely on, he started demanding even more. He thought that being an orphan made me an easy target. What he didn't know is that I'm a life taker. Any money borrowed from my hands must be repaid with your life. My ancestors, the first of the life takers, were cursed by the heavens, born without a natural lifespan. To survive, we must borrow years from the living. Once, a greedy clan member tried scattering enchanted money on the street, taking the lifespan of anyone who picked it up. Without exception, every one of them suffered a doubly harsh divine punishment, dying in the most horrific ways. Later, through generations of careful study, our ancestors refined the method. As long as someone who is deeply sinful but has escaped punishment willingly borrows money from us and fails to repay it, we can, with relative safety, claim their lifespan as debt repayment when the term is due. And Shawn was the target I had so carefully selected. The aura of sin above his head glowed red. He definitely had blood on his hands, but had somehow evaded justice. That's why I never refused him when he asked to borrow money. He noticed that while I made him sign an IOU every time, I never once pushed him to pay it back. So he started borrowing more and more. We had only been together for 3 months, and he was already in for 20,000. Wanting to get out of paying me back, he rushed me into marriage. He was the perfect target. How could I let him get away? Of course I said yes. But who would have thought that after hearing I was an orphan, he would demand I hand over all the IOUs he'd signed? He claimed they were a wedding gift from me to him, a way to wipe our slate clean. That was a non-starter. These IOUs were essential items for the final life-taking ritual. If I gave them back, my 20,000 would be completely wasted. I don't make deals where I lose. So, I soothed him with a soft voice. Shawn, honey, don't worry. Those IOUs are a testament to my love for you. I was happy to lend you the money. If you don't want to pay it back, you don't have to. Hearing this, Shawn sulked a bit. Well, if you really mean that, then give me another 10,000. I'll use it to prep for our wedding. He wanted to borrow more money? I couldn't have been happier. I immediately got out a fresh IOU for him. Shawn took it, his eyes darting around. Since this is proof of our love and you don't expect me to pay it back, I'm not going to write a due date, he told me. I just nodded sweetly. It didn't matter. As long as he signed the IOU and took the money, the universe would recognize the debt. Shawn glanced at the transfer notification on his phone, a satisfied smirk spreading across his face. He then turned and started barking orders at me. Since we're getting married, you should get ready to meet my parents tomorrow. And I'm telling you, we're a respectable family. The gifts you bring better not be cheap. And don't forget the cash gift for my parents. As he spoke, a greedy glint appeared in his eyes. He licked his lips and held up 2 fingers. At least $2,000. Never mind the fact that it's unheard of for the woman to give the man's parents a cash gift when visiting their home. Just the things he was demanding were worth several months of his life. Lending him money was one thing, but spending my own on scum like this? That seemed unnecessary. So for a moment I didn't answer. Shawn noticed my hesitation and his face instantly darkened. Chloe, what's that supposed to mean? You say you love me, but when it comes to spending money on my family, you're not willing? So you're just another materialistic woman. Fine, let's just break up. He was convinced I was head over heels in love with him, smugly trying to blackmail me, waiting for me to back down, apologize, and hand over the money. Of course, I gave him exactly what he wanted. I quickly explained, feigning panic. Shawn, you've misunderstood. I was just thinking that the money for your family is also proof of my love for you. So I was thinking. Shawn let out a sigh of relief, then shot me a disdainful look. You want me to sign another IOU, right? It's my money anyway. This is so pointless. Fine, give it here. With a wave of his hand, he signed another IOU for 8,000. Waving the freshly signed IOU, I happily went shopping with Shawn. Spending my money was out of the question, but lending him his? No problem. When we got to Shawn's house, his parents and younger brother were all there. I presented the 3 of them with the expensive gifts Shawn and I had picked out. Even after accepting them, they didn't bother to give me a warm look. Shawn's mother even pointed a finger at my nose and scolded, "Don't think I don't know what's going on. This was all paid for with my son's money. Trying to look generous by spending my son's cash, you're a real spendthrift." She wasn't exactly wrong. While I had technically paid for it, Shawn had signed an IOU. That meant he was paying for it with his life. So, I quickly lowered my head and admitted fault, handing over the $2,000 cash gift I'd prepared. His mother snatched it away and counted it right in front of me. After confirming it was indeed $2,000, she nodded at his father. Mr. Shen took the money, stuffed it in his pocket, and started lecturing me. "I hear you're an orphan. If you want to marry into our family, you need to learn some manners. You can't be as uncultured as you were before. Go make dinner, then clean the house. The windows have to be so clean I can't see a single watermark." Looking at this pigsty of a house, where the floors were so caked with grime you couldn't even tell their original color, I didn't move. Instead, I looked at Shawn, who had been silent since we walked in, letting his family harass me. "Shawn, you never told me your parents needed a housekeeper and a maid. If I'd known, I would have hired a few for them." With that, I pulled out an IOU and handed it to him. "Quick, figure out how much you'll need. I'll go hire them now." Shawn instinctively took the IOU and started writing. His mother saw him write down 1,000 and lunged for it, shrieking, "Have you lost your mind? Your money will all belong to my son eventually. Wasting so much before you're even married. Are you trying to be lazy?" Oh, so they caught on. Faced with their possessive attitude toward my money, I hadn't even said a word before Shawn's brother, Kevin, sidled up. He looked at the IOU and commented, "An IOU written this badly isn't even legally binding. You really don't have to pay it back." Then he turned to me excitedly. "Sister-in-law, my brother told me you'll give him money as long as he signs an IOU for you. We're about to be family. If I write one, will you give me money too?" Seriously? I wouldn't normally lend to just anyone. But this whole family, gathered together, their auras of sin were so dark they were practically ink black. None of them were decent. I was practically drooling. And here I thought I was just fleecing one high-quality sheep. No one told me he'd lead me right to the entire flock. Facing the question, I gave Shawn a look full of affection. Honestly, the IOUs are just my way of chronicling my love for Shawn. I never intended for him to pay me back. You're all Shawn's family, so of course you can too. The moment I finished speaking, Kevin let out a whoop and immediately signed an IOU for 1,000. Not 2 seconds later, his phone buzzed with the transfer notification. Seeing the amount, he excitedly beckoned his parents over. Suddenly, the 2,000 in Mr. Shen's hand didn't seem so special anymore. His mother said to me unhappily, "You woman, you have no financial planning at all. Transfer all your money to my son now. He's an accounting graduate. Let him manage it for you." Wow. This family didn't just want to eat their own dinner. They wanted to steal someone else's pot too. I couldn't let that slide. My expression hardened immediately. I grabbed my bag and pretended I was about to leave. "Shawn, it's because I love you that I'm willing to do all this. Since your mother doesn't like it, maybe we should just call it quits." If this were the old Shawn, finding out he could break up without having to pay back the money, he would have been thrilled. But now, his entire family had gotten a taste of the good life. Seeing their personal ATM about to walk away, they all panicked. Shawn and Kevin grabbed me, trying to coax me to stay. Mr. Shen even slapped his wife across the face, roaring, "The kids are in love and getting along just fine. What are you doing making a scene?" His mother clutched her face, her eyes shooting daggers at me, but she didn't dare say another word. I didn't care. When Mr. Shen mentioned that their home appliances were old, and they wanted to replace them, I pulled out a blank IOU like it was a checkbook and grandly told him to write whatever number he wanted. The moment he finished, I transferred the money. Suddenly, the Shen household was filled with a harmonious atmosphere. Well, except for Shawn's mom. After leaving the Shen's place, I immediately had someone investigate their background. A whole family shrouded in sin is extremely rare. I needed to find out if there was more to the story to avoid any unexpected complications. For the first 2 days after that, Shawn was incredibly attentive, something I had never experienced since we started dating. But his concern only lasted for 2 days before he said to me, "Chloe, my company's team building event this year is at a luxury resort. Look at how shabby my clothes are every day. Why don't you lend me some more money to buy a new outfit? I don't want to embarrass you. Shawn was dressed in trendy designer labels and top-tier athletic brands. He was far from shabby. Plus, he spent money recklessly, buying whatever he saw. But since he was proactively asking to borrow money, how could I refuse? I immediately took out an IOU and had him sign. Shawn took it, glanced at me, and tentatively wrote a 10. Seeing no reaction from me, he added a 9 after it. 19,000. He handed it to me, looking a little uneasy. The smile on my face didn't waver. I carefully put the IOU away and transferred the money to him. After receiving the confirmation message, Shawn was so happy he hugged me and gave me a kiss. "Chloe, I'm so lucky to have met you," he exclaimed, then left in high spirits. I wiped my face and watched his retreating back with a cold smile. He's lucky? No, I'm the one who's lucky. However, less than 5 minutes after Shawn left, my phone rang. I looked and it was Shawn's father. Hearing him cautiously invite me over to see his new set of furniture and appliances, how could I not understand what he meant? I agreed. Just as I was about to head to the Shen's house, the file on their family was sent to my phone. It turned out the Shens didn't just have 2 sons, they also had a daughter named Annie. From a young age, Annie was treated like a maid, taking care of her younger brothers. When she grew up, she worked to support the entire family. Later, when Mr. Shen needed a kidney transplant, the dutiful Annie gave him one of hers. Afterward, the family immediately kicked her out and sent her back to work to earn money. Tragically, Annie contracted an illness. As she lay in the hospital awaiting treatment, her parents refused to help, claiming they had no money. In despair, Annie jumped from the hospital roof. The irony was that this time, the Shen family rushed to the scene as soon as they heard the news, to extort a sum of money from the hospital. Around the same time, the 2 Shen brothers bullied a classmate so severely that he became disabled and later committed suicide. Although they escaped legal punishment because they were minors, no local school would accept them. So the Shen parents took the extortion money and moved here, buying a house and settling down. Just as I finished reading the file on the Shen family, I arrived at their place. This time, Mr. Shen was actually waiting for me at the entrance to the neighborhood. When he saw me, he greeted me with incessant, enthusiastic small talk and pulled me toward their home. In stark contrast to our last meeting, the Shen's old apartment, now filled with new furniture and appliances, felt even more cramped because they couldn't bear to throw the old stuff away. The entire room and the hallway outside were piled high with clutter. When she saw me, Mrs. Shen had completely lost her previous sour expression. Instead, she squeezed out an ugly smile. The 2 of them kept making awkward small talk with me, never getting to the point. I smiled and played along, pretending I didn't know anything. It wasn't until Mrs. Shen couldn't hold it in any longer and used the excuse of preparing lunch to pull her husband away that I quietly followed them. Mrs. Shen said somewhat angrily, "Shawn said she gave him the 19,000 just like that. Why don't we just get Shawn to marry her already? Then all her money will be ours, and we can spend it however we want. Why are we wasting our time trying to ask for it?" Hearing this, Mr. Shen retorted impatiently, "You gave birth to that son of yours. Don't you know what he's like? Do you really think he'd share any money that falls into his hands? We're better off getting as much as we can while she's still trying to butter us up before she marries in." His words implied that he took it for granted that my money would become Shawn's as soon as we were married. Having made up their minds, they came back over to me. Mr. Shen decided to be direct. "Chloe, look, this house is a bit run down. It would be a shame for you to live in a place like this after you get married. Why don't you lend us some money so we can renovate it?" I looked at their tense and expectant faces and slowly nodded. Mr. Shen took the IOU and, after much thought, solemnly wrote 20,000 on it. He handed it to me, looking a little apprehensive. I took it and promptly transferred the money to him. Mr. Shen stared at the transaction confirmation again and again, incredibly satisfied. After Shawn borrowed money from me last time, I hadn't seen him at all. It was only from his social media that I knew he'd bought a watch worth over $10,000. He was probably renting flashy cars with his buddies to take pictures, which he posted daily with some pretentious caption. I figured I couldn't just let him run wild. So I arranged for someone to keep an eye on him. But no sooner had I sent someone over than I got a message. Shawn was currently playing the part of a trust fund kid and was juggling relationships with 4 or 5 different girls. Mr. Shen, on the other hand, having gotten a taste of easy money, came back just a few days later under the pretext that the renovation budget wasn't enough and borrowed another 30,000 from me. Seeing how readily I lent it to him, his appetite grew, and he started asking for 40,000, and then 50,000. Before Mr. Shen could ask for another loan, I received an angry call from Shawn. "Chloe, what did you do? Dad is trying to divorce Mom now, and she says it's all your fault. You get over here right now." When I arrived, I found the Shen house was just as cluttered as the last time I'd seen it, with no signs of renovation. Mr. Shen had his arm around a middle-aged woman, standing there arrogantly. He looked at Mrs. Shen, who was on the floor, weeping and pounding the ground in despair. "Look at you, you shrew. How are you worthy of the man I am now? Let's get a divorce. I'm giving you 3 days to move out of my house." Shawn and Kevin stood off to the side, impatiently playing on their phones, showing no intention of helping their mother. It was Mrs. Shen whose sharp eyes spotted me first. She scrambled to her feet and rushed at me, screaming, "You little tramp! Look what you've done! You've ruined my family. I'm going to tear your face off today." I stood my ground. Mr. Shen reacted quickly, jumping in front of me and kicking his wife to the ground. At that moment, Shawn noticed me too. He came over, grabbed my wrist angrily, and demanded to know if I had hired someone to destroy their family. Mr. Shen slapped Shawn's hand away and wrapped his arm around the other woman again. "Don't listen to your mother's nonsense. Tina and I are in love." Hearing this, Mrs. Shen, who was struggling to get up from the floor, retorted furiously, "Love my ass. You're over 60. If you hadn't promised to buy this woman a house with the $100,000 you got from Chloe, who would even look at a disgusting old man who never showers?" Mr. Shen erupted in a stream of curses, but his sons had heard the key number. Over $100,000. Shawn was so furious he dragged me outside. Once we were in a quiet spot, he threw my hand off and roared, "You gave my dad over $100,000? Are you crazy? I'm the one you're marrying. If you give him all your money, what am I supposed to spend?" It seemed Shawn's parents knew their son pretty well. I calmly replied, "Darling, don't worry. It's just a little money. It won't affect our wedding." Shawn latched onto the key words. "A little money? You mean this is just pocket change to you?" When I nodded, he immediately probed, "Chloe, I'm working on a business venture right now and I need some investment capital. Could you lend me $60,000? I readily agreed. Shawn got the money, unable to hide his excitement, and left without a second thought for the drama unfolding in his house. Before he left, he didn't forget to add, "Our money is for our future family. Don't give any more to my dad. That old man is no good. The second he gets a little money, he's out chasing women." I naturally nodded in agreement. Mr. Shen was already on borrowed time and had a cheap life to begin with. He'd pretty much borrowed all he could anymore, and his blood relatives would have to start paying the price. As far as I knew, Mr. Shen's parents and siblings were still alive. If they started paying off his debt with their lives, it would be the same as me taking the lives of ordinary people. I don't do losing business. Just as Shawn left and I was about to leave myself, Mr. Shen and his mistress blocked my path. Shamelessly, he asked me for 100,000. I pretended to be in a difficult position. "I'm sorry, uncle. Shawn told me not to lend you any more money. I can't do anything that would make him unhappy." After that, no matter what Mr. Shen said, I wouldn't budge. He became so enraged he started cursing at me. The rest of the Shen family stood by, watching coldly. Mrs. Shen even clapped her hands in delight. Tired of dealing with them, I turned to leave. But before I could even get out of their neighborhood, Kevin caught up to me from behind. "Chloe, I'm a little tight on cash lately. Could you lend me $10,000? I looked at him, his current eager expression a stark contrast to the indifference he showed when I was being berated in his home. A gentle smile spread across my face. "Of course. If it's you, never mind 10,000. I could lend you even more." Since I had refused to lend Mr. Shen any more money, the woman he was seeing realized there was nothing left to gain from him and left. Mr. Shen was left with nothing. When he went home, he had to face his wife's sarcastic taunts, which led to a complete mental breakdown. He tried to find me, but all he knew was my first name. Seeing him running around looking so pitiful, I kindly had someone leak Shawn's location to him. Mr. Shen didn't waste a second. He went straight to Shawn, whom he found with his arms around another woman, living it up. Seeing his son's extravagant lifestyle after his own life had fallen apart, Mr. Shen was filled with jealousy and rage. He threatened to tell me about Shawn's cheating. Shawn panicked and tried to stop him, but his father, furious that Shawn had cut off his source of money, wouldn't listen. In the ensuing struggle, Shawn pushed his father to the ground. He didn't move again. At that same moment, watching the IOU belonging to Mr. Shen burn to ashes in my ritual circle, I slowly stopped my work. I wondered what Shawn would say to me next. Sure enough, a few hours later, I got a call from Shawn. "Chloe, my dad passed away suddenly today. The doctor said it was sudden cardiac death." There was a hint of sorrow in his voice, but then his tone shifted abruptly. "Can you lend me some more money? I want to give my dad a decent funeral, to show my respect." "It's not much, 100,000 should be enough." Even though Shawn had borrowed a lot of money from me, Mr. Shen's funeral was extremely simple. I discreetly asked one of the staff members, and they said Shawn had chosen their most budget-friendly package. Even the urn was the cheapest one they offered. He didn't even buy a burial plot for his father, claiming he wanted his father's soul to return to his hometown, and that he planned to scatter the ashes back in the countryside. I arrived early. Shawn and his brother were nowhere to be seen. Only their mother stood there, her eyes vacant, clutching the funeral portrait. It was clear she was the only one at this funeral who was genuinely grieving for Mr. Shen. Just then, she saw me walk in. Her numb expression instantly changed. She placed the portrait on a table, her eyes looking like they were about to shoot fire as she stormed towards me. "You bitch. You killed him. How dare you show your face here? I'm going to tear you to shreds today." The surrounding relatives were misled by her words, assuming I was Mr. Shen's mistress. Their eyes immediately filled with contempt. Verbally, they tried to mediate, but their hands moved to restrain me, ready to let Mrs. Shen do as she pleased. I wasn't about to let myself be humiliated like that. I was about to dodge when I shouted at her, "Auntie, I loaned your husband over $100,000 because I love Shawn. He didn't have to pay it back. You don't have to test me like this." Hearing this, everyone froze. They looked at Mrs. Shen differently now. Realizing her mistake, Mrs. Shen quickly pulled me into an empty corner. Her tone was harsh. "You jinx. If you hadn't lent him the money, he wouldn't have been fooling around outside, and he wouldn't have died so senselessly. I'm telling you right now, if you don't transfer all of your savings to my son today, you can forget about ever marrying into our family." She finished, looking at me with absolute confidence. I glanced at Shawn hiding behind the crowd in the distance and almost laughed. I wondered how long this family had rehearsed this little play. First, they tried to intimidate me, and when that failed, they resorted to direct threats. Perhaps my previous compliance had given them the courage to think they had me cornered. While I pondered this, my face showed no reaction to her words. Instead, a smile played on my lips as I asked, "Auntie, with Uncle gone, life must be much harder for you now. Do you need me to lend you some money?" Mrs. Shen, who had been so sure of herself, snapped at my words. She angrily shoved me out the door. I brushed the wrinkles from my clothes, unconcerned, and was about to turn and leave when Kevin appeared, blocking my path. "Chloe, my mom and brother are being too hard on you. You shouldn't have to put up with them for their sake. I worry about you." Watching him blush as he spoke, I replied gently, "Thank you, Kevin. Is the money from before enough? Let me lend you some more." It was a shame I couldn't successfully lend money to his mother, but with Kevin serving himself up on a platter, I naturally had to seize the opportunity. Hearing my words, Kevin immediately shook his head nervously. "Chloe, you've misunderstood me. I was just genuinely concerned about you." Honestly, both Shen brothers were not good looking, and now Kevin was trying to play the good guy to steal his brother's girl. His terrible acting was painful to watch. Of course, I wouldn't expose him. Instead, I thoughtfully went along with his act. "I feel your concern, Kevin. So you have to accept my concern for you, too." With that, I handed him a blank IOU. He verbally protested, But his hands deftly took it and filled it out for 50,000. When he handed the IOU back to me, he feigned shyness, but the greed in his eyes was impossible to hide. Just as I was about to take out my phone to transfer the money to Kevin, Shawn, who had been watching from the shadows for who knows how long, couldn't hold back any longer. He jumped out and pressed my hand down. "Chloe, have you forgotten what I told you last time? After we get married, we'll need money for everything. We need to save. Don't just give money away to outsiders." I feigned hesitation. "Shawn, Kevin is your brother, your family. He's not an outsider." Shawn glanced at Kevin. "My brother has my mom to support him. Besides, he's an adult now. He shouldn't be asking his sister-in-law for money. Ignore him." Shawn didn't see the venomous look Kevin shot him from behind as he spoke. Seeing that I had agreed, Shawn, perhaps deluded by my usual submissiveness, didn't press the issue further. He then got to his point. "Chloe, now that my dad's gone without ever seeing a grandchild, Mom wants us to get married soon. After Dad's funeral, let's go talk to her about the wedding. She's getting old. As long as you agree to everything she says, I guarantee you'll marry into our family in no time." The way he said it, as if the Shens were royalty and it was some great honor for me to marry in, almost made me laugh. But I still agreed. I hadn't finished lending out money, yet it was best not to create unnecessary complications. However, I'm a creditor of my word. When Shawn wasn't looking, I transferred the money to Kevin anyway. Seeing his excited expression, I put a finger to my lips in a shush gesture. After all, I wouldn't play favorites. To me, every little sheep in the flock was important. After Mr. Shen's funeral was hastily concluded, Shawn eagerly dragged me to his house. His mother scrutinized me from head to toe for a long moment before speaking, as if bestowing a great honor. "I'll say it again. If an orphan like you wants to marry into my Shen family, you must transfer all of your assets to my son. After the wedding, you are not to go out and show your face in public. Stay home, serve me well, and fulfill my son's filial duties for him." Wow. Who says time travel doesn't exist? Marrying into this family was like a direct trip from modern society back to the age of slavery. I was only here to lend this family money, but giving it all to Shawn was not an option. His life wasn't worth that much. I turned to Shawn, who had been silent, and asked him, "Shawn, is this what you want too?" Stared at so directly, Shawn seemed a bit embarrassed. He shrugged his shoulders, rubbed his hands together, and avoided my gaze. "Chloe, you know I'm a filial son. In this house, my mom calls the shots. Besides, she's just looking out for us. Just be a good girl and listen." They were really pushing their luck. I grabbed my bag and turned to walk out the door. Seeing this, the mother-son duo panicked. Mrs. Shen yelled after me sharply, "Chloe, what's your problem? If you walk out that door, you can forget about ever marrying into our family." Although I was afraid of any surprises and didn't want to alert them, this family's greed had gone too far. They needed to be put in their place. The Shens talked tough, but having tasted the benefits I offered, there was no way they would actually let me leave. The two brothers quickly followed me out, pulling me back with soft words of comfort. Only after they had exhausted all their pleasantries did I relent. Looking at Shawn's nervous face, I smiled gently. "Shawn, I love you, so I'm willing to give you the best of everything. But I can't accept it when your family actively demands it from me." Seeing I had softened, Shawn immediately launched into a tirade against his mother's demands for money, raising his hand and swearing that he loved me for who I was, not for my money. Cheesy sweet nothings poured out of him like they were free. When he was practically parched, I took 2 IOUs from my bag and handed them over. "All right, stop talking. I know you love me. I won't take what your mother said to heart." Shawn's eyes lit up when he saw the IOUs. He quickly took them, but his face soured when he saw that Kevin also had one. He snatched Kevin's, tore it to shreds, and said, "Chloe, from now on, you only need to deal with me when it comes to our marriage. You don't need to worry about anyone else." With that, he took the IOU, paused, and wrote a 1 followed by a long string of zeros. He handed it to me hesitantly, carefully watching my expression. I took it and raised an eyebrow. Already in the 8 figures. But I still accepted the IOU and promptly transferred the money. The amount was a bit large, but I glanced back at the half-open door of the Shen house. If his life wasn't enough to cover it, there were still blood relatives to help pay the debt. Shawn left, completely satisfied after getting the money, leaving Kevin staring at the pile of shredded paper on the floor. Although he had just borrowed a sum from me, who complains about having too much money? I patted his shoulder and feigned an apology. I'm sorry, Kevin. In the future, I probably won't be able to. Kevin didn't say anything in response, but his eyes were fixed on the direction Shawn had left, his fists clenched tightly. Perhaps the last incident had given Shawn a sense of crisis. This time, after getting the money, he didn't spend all his time fooling around outside. Instead, he started asking me out on dates and shopping trips every few days to foster our relationship. I, of course, agreed to everything. The only thing was, while this guy was quite generous when he was out on his own, he was incredibly stingy when he was with me. He would even get upset if I bought a cup of bubble tea, constantly nagging me to be frugal for the sake of our future little family. He had a strong sense of ownership and control over my assets. It wasn't long before Kevin sought me out. Knowing what a piece of work his own brother was, Kevin made sure to approach me when Shawn wasn't around to borrow money. I pretended to be in a tough spot and didn't agree right away. When I kept refusing, Kevin got anxious. He took 2 steps forward, trying to grab my hand, as if he had made up his mind to tell me something. I pushed his hand away, but as if by accident, my phone brushed against something and dialed Shawn. Chloe, you have to be careful of my brother. I heard him and my mom planning to trick you into marriage, and then kill you for the insurance money. I have a recording, listen if you don't believe me. With that, he took out his phone and played an audio clip. It was the voices of Shawn and his mother, discussing a plot to take my assets and then kill me to collect the insurance. After playing the clip, Kevin looked at me with a deeply affectionate expression. They don't have good intentions towards you. In this family, I'm the only one who genuinely cares about you. Before Kevin could finish his sentence, he was kicked to the ground. You've gone too far. You dare to make a move on your own brother's girl? Today, I'm going to teach you a lesson on behalf of Mom and Dad. It was Shawn, who had apparently been nearby and had run over as soon as he got the call. He viciously kicked Kevin, who was struggling to get up, a couple more times. Still not satisfied, he bent down to grab him for a slap. Seizing the opportunity, Kevin sprang up and punched back. If you hadn't been so cruel, I would never have done this, he yelled, and the two of them started brawling. Seeing a crowd gathering and someone taking out their phone to call the police, I focused on playing the part of the worried girlfriend. But the two of them were fighting more and more fiercely. Suddenly, someone in the crowd screamed. I saw Shawn get shoved hard by Kevin, sending him stumbling into the path of a speeding car. With a sickening thud, the sound of a body hitting the ground silenced the chaotic scene. Shawn's injuries were extremely severe. During his treatment, he received multiple critical condition notices and was ultimately diagnosed as brain dead. He was moved to the intensive care unit, kept alive only by life support equipment. When the doctor said that Shawn might never wake up, the look of joy on Kevin's face was impossible to hide. He even said to his mother, who was still wiping away tears, "Mom, what's the point of him living like this? Let's do what's best for him, and just turn off the life support." Hearing this, his mother was stunned into a fury. After a moment, she lashed out at him. "How could you say that? That's your brother." Their argument was immediately shut down by the medical staff. Fuming, Mrs. Shen saw me standing silently to the side and immediately rushed over, aiming to slap me. "It's all your fault, you wicked woman. You jinx. If it weren't for you, my son wouldn't have gotten into an accident. Give me back my husband. Give me back my son." Although there was some truth to her words, I have no interest in being publicly assaulted. Since Kevin had been secretly coveting his brother's position, I decided to give him a chance to prove himself. I quickly dodged behind him. Seeing my move, Kevin immediately spread his arms to block his mother. "What does my dad and brother's accident have to do with Chloe? It was their own fault. Can you please stop being so unreasonable?" Hearing this, Mrs. Shen paused, looked at Kevin, then at me, and seemed to realize something. "You shameless woman. My son is still lying in a hospital bed, and you're already cheating on him. I'm going to scratch your face up today, and see who you can seduce then." Ignoring Kevin's attempts to stop her, she lunged, trying to claw at my face, spewing a stream of profanities. Seeing the situation, I pressed myself tighter behind Kevin. Mrs. Shen only grew angrier, her movements more violent. And her precious son, Kevin, was still counting on me to lend him money, so there was no way he'd let me get hurt. Seeing that his mother wouldn't listen to reason, Kevin's patience wore thin. He shoved her forcefully to the ground. Perhaps completely heartbroken, Mrs. Shen sat on the floor for a long time without moving. Kevin might have felt he went too far, and was about to say something when a nurse came over again. "You two again? Don't you know you need to be quiet in a hospital? Family member, please come and pay the patient's bill." At this, the mother and son showed a rare moment of perfect synchronicity, both turning their gazes to me. I wasn't the least bit angered by the earlier drama. Instead, I met Mrs. Shen's gaze with a smile. "Auntie, do you need me to lend you some money to pay your son's medical bills?" Mrs. Shen had no savings. She had no pension, and the savings she and her husband had, along with the money borrowed from me, had all been taken by her husband for his mistress. As for her two sons, they had taken the money they borrowed from me and spent it on themselves, with no thought of providing for their mother. So, faced with my question, even though she was burning with rage, Mrs. Shen didn't say another word. After all, Shawn's medical expenses were no small sum. Kevin, hearing my offer, rushed over eagerly. "Chloe, lend the money to me. I'll go pay for my brother." With that, he impatiently held out his hand, asking for an IOU. Since he was willing to borrow, I had no reason to refuse. I handed him the IOU directly. Before writing the amount, he perhaps remembered the time Shawn tore up his IOU. He paused, then wrote down the exact same number Shawn had last time. I took it and couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Seeing my expression, Kevin looked at me uneasily. I said nothing and simply transferred the money. His lifespan was still long, of course. I was going to lend it. When Kevin received the transfer, his hands were trembling. He counted the zeros on the screen twice. It wasn't until his mother urged him impatiently that he finally moved. With Kevin gone, Mrs. Shen stared at me with eyes full of hatred, as if she was about to pounce and tear me apart at any second. I smiled at her good-naturedly. Her anger flared even brighter, but her eyes darted around for a few moments, and it seemed a wicked idea had formed in her mind. She turned back to me with a smile. "Chloe, it was all my fault for getting in your way. Seeing you two like this pains me too. How about this? I won't interfere in your relationship anymore. All I ask is that you give him an heir. I've already looked into it. They said in this situation, you two can do IVF. It won't affect your ability to have children." Her words made me want to laugh. Now she was after my womb. I couldn't be bothered to deal with her. I gave a cold laugh and went straight home, ignoring her shouts behind me. Back home, I took out all of Shawn's IOUs and immediately placed them on the altar to begin the life borrowing ceremony. In his current state, he couldn't borrow any more money anyway. I might as well take back his lifespan now. Besides, with Kevin around, I wasn't worried about finding someone to borrow the family's remaining years. Not long after the ceremony ended, I received a call from Kevin. Shawn was dead. Perhaps because he had me as a cash cow, Shawn, after borrowing a considerable amount of money, never once thought of buying any real estate for himself. He spent it all on lavish pleasures. So, although his mother inherited his estate, from what I heard, there was only about $15,000 left. Seeing how grand Shawn's funeral was, I knew that his mother must have used all that money to give her favorite son a proper send-off. I arrived early and didn't see the two Shens. After asking around, I headed towards a break room. But the conversation I heard coming from behind the slightly ajar door made me freeze in my tracks. "I cannot oppose you being with that Chloe, but you have to promise me, as soon as you get her money after the wedding, you must send her down to join your brother." Kevin seemed to have a different opinion and didn't reply. Seeing this, his mother grew angry. "Don't tell me you can't bear to part with that little hussy. With money, you can find any woman you want." After a long pause, I heard Kevin's hesitant voice. "Mom, I'm not saying I disagree, but I'm afraid your plan won't work. That woman already knew my brother wanted to kill her for the insurance money." In their conversation, They never once considered the possibility that I wouldn't marry into their family. Mrs. Shen, perhaps consumed by her hatred for me, heard Kevin's words and gritted her teeth. Then I'll do it myself. You just need to cooperate with me. I couldn't be bothered to listen to the rest of their discussion about how to divide my assets. By the time I returned to the funeral, it wasn't long before Kevin and his mother appeared. They were both agitated to see me. Mrs. Shen was filled with a mix of hatred and anger, while Kevin looked at me the same way I looked at his family. We both saw each other as prey. However, their unity was not something I wanted to see. I decided to strike first. Auntie Kevin, now that Shawn is gone, I don't want to stay in this sad place anymore. Before I go, let me lend you both one last sum of money. You need to take good care of yourselves in the future. I spoke with sincere emotion and handed them 2 IOUs. Kevin subconsciously took his, but my words shocked the 2 conspirators. What? You're leaving? Mrs. Shen shrieked in disbelief. Then she turned to me, her anger making her words reckless. You are not allowed to leave. You must marry into our family and take care of us for the rest of our lives. By this point, many guests had arrived at the funeral, not just relatives but also many of Shawn's friends. Many people heard her words and were stunned by the Shen family's greedy display, pointing and whispering about them. Kevin, for all his shady thoughts, was still young and couldn't handle the public embarrassment. He quickly pulled his mother back and looked at me with pleading eyes. Chloe, can we please talk about this after my brother's funeral? Let's not make a scene for others to see. He thought I was a pushover, that I would back down to save them face. I went along with his wish and said no more. However, many people continued to whisper and point at the mother and son. Even someone as thick-skinned as Mrs. Shen couldn't take the pressure and hastily ended the farcical funeral. Before I left, Kevin quickly stuffed the IOUs into my hand, only saying we'd talk next time, and then said nothing more. Sitting in the car, I opened the IOUs and was pleasantly surprised. He had filled out both of them. The kid had borrowed such a huge amount that he had not only signed away his own life, but also a good portion of his mother's. Without a word, I immediately transferred the money. There were no signs that Kevin had been out partying, which made me curious about what he could have possibly done to spend so much money in such a short time. Although I had my suspicions, I still had someone look into it. The information that came back confirmed my guess. It turned out that Kevin had a pre-existing online gambling addiction. After getting money from me, it had only gotten worse. He hadn't enjoyed a single cent of the money he'd received. It all went straight to the casino. Seeing this, I couldn't help but shake my head. This family was truly rotten to the core. Even Mrs. Shen, who had never borrowed money from me, wasn't without greed. She was just too greedy, always wanting to hit the jackpot in one go and take all my money for herself. A few days later, Kevin contacted me. Perhaps as a gesture of goodwill, they chose a decent restaurant for our meeting. When I walked in, the first thing I saw were Kevin's bloodshot eyes and the heavy, dark circles under them. I guess this was what a gambler who had lost everything looked like. The moment Kevin saw me, he eagerly poured me tea and water. Mrs. Shen, however, sat there with a frown, putting on the airs of a mother-in-law. The scene was so ridiculous I wanted to laugh. Seeing that I was ignoring her, Mrs. Shen couldn't hold back any longer. What's wrong with you? Our Shawn has just passed, and you can't even greet me properly anymore? Don't you have anything to say to me? It had only been a few days, and her confidence was back. She thought she had me under her thumb again. But as it happened, I did have something to say to her. Auntie, are you under a lot of financial stress right now? Would you like me to lend you some money? Mrs. Shen took my words as a sign of weakness and, forgetting her previous lesson, began to order me around. I'll let the past go. As long as you kneel down, bow your head, and apologize to me today, I will still allow you into this family. I couldn't be bothered with her delusions. If she didn't want to borrow money, someone else would borrow it for her. So, I just got up and left. Kevin, seeing this, panicked and rushed to block my way. Behind him, Mrs. Shen, unable to stomach the loss of face, started shouting, "You cursed Shawn and his father to death, and now you think you can just walk away? No way. You must marry into our family and have a son to be adopted by Shawn, so he can have an heir. Never mind what the other diners thought of her outburst, the three of us were politely escorted out of the restaurant. Seeing Mrs. Shen was about to come at me again, grabbing and pulling, I tiredly pulled the stone-faced Kevin, who had been watching from the side, between us. Kevin, if your aunt is going to keep acting like this, then none of us should see each other again. My voice held an implicit threat. A gambler, especially one who's lost everything, has no rationality. Their mind is consumed by one thought: get more money to win it all back. So upon hearing my words, whatever they had planned before was forgotten. Only one thought remained. He couldn't afford to offend his cash cow. He instinctively waved his hand at his mother. I accidentally bumped him, and his hand flew up, slapping his mother across the face. To everyone there, except for Kevin and me, it looked like he had deliberately slapped his own mother. Mrs. Shen clutched her face in disbelief. "I'm your mother. How dare you hit me for a woman?" Her emotions ignited, and while Kevin was still stunned, she kicked him hard. I saw it coming and, not wanting to get caught in their drama, quickly dodged. And so Kevin, caught off guard, was knocked to the ground by the kick. Perhaps it was just his bad luck, but his temple slammed hard against the sharp edge of a planter on the street. Blood trickled out. He crumpled to the ground and went silent. Sensing something was wrong, Mrs. Shen rushed over to check on him. But no matter how she shook the unconscious Kevin, it was no use. I winced and dialed 911, wondering if all that shaking was causing a second injury. The police car arrived even faster than the ambulance. A kind passerby had witnessed our dispute and called them. After a preliminary assessment, the police decided to send Kevin to the hospital first. But Kevin, who was already at risk for a cerebral hemorrhage due to long-term lack of sleep, combined with the external trauma and the severe secondary injury from his mother's shaking, was beyond saving. He passed away before they could do anything. Unable to accept this outcome, Mrs. Shen collapsed. I kindly helped her up. When she saw me, she came to her senses and raised her hand to slap me. "Auntie, do you still have money to arrange Kevin's funeral? Would you like to borrow some?" Mrs. Shen's hand froze in midair. She couldn't bring it down. She stared blankly as she took the IOU I handed her. Then, as if something broke inside her, she covered her face and began to sob uncontrollably on the ground. It was a pitiful sight, but the law shows no mercy for such things. She was arrested for negligent homicide. I was the one who kindly arranged for her bail, allowing her to handle her son's funeral. This time, she had lost all her spirit. After Kevin's funeral, she stopped me. Can you lend me some money?" I was slightly taken aback but quickly recovered, smiling as I handed her an IOU. "For you. But the amount you fill in cannot exceed this number." Watching her sign the IOU right up to the limit I'd set, I collected it with satisfaction and promptly transferred the money. Whatever she planned to do with it didn't matter. She wouldn't live long enough to spend it anyway. Another great harvest.